Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Instructional Design Career Academy Coffee Talk. And I am Dr. Laura McNeil. I'm the founder of IDCA, and I'm bringing you experts in the instructional design and e-learning industry to help answer career questions for you and help you jumpstart your ID career. And tonight I have Dr. Kristi Garrett with me, and very pleased. She is a friend of mine and also graduated from the University of Alabama's PhD program. And just really, really excited that she could take time during this holiday weekend. And we've got a hello, ladies, from Gwen. And everybody is so busy. So thank you for taking some time to share some information and share some great career thoughts. Now, just a reminder to give StreamYard permission to show your name. And we have Melissa here, excited for the session. We are too. And Regine is here, yay. But go to StreamYard.com/Facebook. So I will introduce Kristi. She joins us with professional experience as an information technology consultant and instructional technologist in corporate and higher ed environments. Kristi has a Bachelor of Science in Management Information Systems, a Master of Science in Management, and a PhD in Instructional Leadership with a concentration in Instructional Technology from the University of Alabama. Kristi's focus is on the effective use and implementation of technology to enhance learning experiences. So welcome, Kristi.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to ask you first, what got you interested in instructional design in the first place?
So this is kind of an interesting link. When I was working as an IT consultant, I just became interested in teaching online. And the opportunity presented itself for me to teach like an introduction to MIS. So the interesting thing of it was that when I started teaching, there was no assistance with getting my class set up. So I had to look at it from a student perspective of, okay, what does this class need to make it flow so the student be able to understand and follow the instructions and be successful in this class. And that was how I actually initially started developing my course, and not even really thinking about it being instructional design. I'm really more so thinking about it from information system perspective, where you go through the life cycle of developing components for a program and then testing it and then changing it and doing all those sorts of things. But using that part of my background into actually developing a class in an online format was pretty seamless for me. And I kept the mindset of what my audience, what would my audience need to be successful in this class? And that was the whole start of the instructional design era for me. And as I got more into it, not really even thinking about pursuing a PhD at that particular time. And when I did start looking at programs, and I saw the program at the University of Alabama, I really didn't think that I was a good fit for it. So I actually pursued like an EDD in, I think it was educational leadership at UAB. But what ended up happening, I didn't get accepted into that program. And some of my professors kept saying, you got, technology experience. You really need to be in something technology focused and driven. Mm-hmm. And I went back and I looked at the program again at UA, and the rest is history on that part.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And such a great program, and
yes,
really prepared us well to go out into the workforce and really spread our wings. So you decided and really right off from graduating from the University of Alabama. You started as an ID consultant, and how did that happen?
So actually, initially, when I finished the program at UA, I moved to Atlanta and I started working with a technical college in Atlanta as a director online. So from there, my interest still was to be out on my own. And that position phased out. And that was my opportunity at that point, was to not job search, but instead career search as my own consultant. And that was how I pursued that route. And actually going that, into the whole consulting arena as an independent contractor and consultant, I had just started, got my business license. So it was more so of, okay, let me get my name out there. And the people that I knew and people who had worked with me knew the type of work that I did. So it made it a little easier to transition and reach out to different individuals, because at that particular time it was mainly in higher ed, and be able to work with different schools.
Right. And so how much time, how long were you at the technical college before you launched your own business?
3.5 years.
Okay. Okay. So enough time to establish yourself, to work in the field, make contacts.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that, and then on top of that, again, going back to our education from the University of Alabama, attending different conferences and presenting at conferences, you meet so many different people in that realm until that also produces new opportunities as well. So it didn't just start after I got that instructional design position. It was a continuation from the PhD program.
And we've talked in the group a lot about networking and how important it is, even if you're a little bit uncomfortable with networking and reaching out and maybe talking to somebody who's a complete stranger. What would you say to someone who's new to ID about the importance of networking and maybe how to get started?
So one of the things, again, I would say is your audience. Think about who you want to do work for and what does that look like? Are you an example of people that would be in your audience? So, and I've always kept that at the forefront of my mind as far as teaching, because one of the things that my professors and chair would always say, again, me having an IT background and being in our program, I still was different from a lot of my other classmates, because a lot of people were either K-12 or higher ed and did not have that corporate background. So a lot of the lingo and things, real technical terminology, I was used to, but I would try to communicate that to other people, and it wasn't, as well received as if I was talking to another IT person. So having to retrain myself to realize, hey, I may know this, but I got to figure out a way to help them understand what I'm really trying to say and how it applies and helps them.
Right.
That's one of the things that I would definitely say, as you all are going out, networking, think about the person that you're talking to, find out a little bit of information about them, and also try to, while you're having that conversation, see how you can correlate what they're saying to what you already have information on, and how you can tell them more about how you can assist them with whatever situation or problem that they're trying to tackle.
Right, exactly. And we've talked in the group about how we in instructional design are problem solvers. We are the solution finders for these folks, and how important listening is to your clients. And I bet that's a big part of your job in terms in any ID's job. Talk about that aspect of it, especially for a new client.
And you're saying as far as being a problem solver, listener?
Listener. Mm-hmm.
Yes. again, your audience, being a careful, keen listener, and listen for gaps in what people are saying. Because a lot of times, and you think back, a lot of you who are in PhD programs, whenever you are working on that dissertation and you're writing that paper, there's a lot of information that you find in the different articles that you're referencing. But there's also gaps in things that you don't really think about. So when you're actually writing that paper and your dissertation committee is reviewing it, they're looking for gaps. And so that's the same thought process that I'm in a lot of times when I'm talking to clients and trying to figure out, what is it that they're really trying to accomplish? What is the end result? So I just kind of stay in the mindset of looking at the audience and listening for the gaps. Because a lot of times they don't even realize that there is a gap because they've been in that process, whatever that process is for them, for so long until they have no clue that there really is, maybe 2 or 3 different gaps that should be addressed in what they're trying to, their end result of what they're trying to accomplish.
Right, right. And it's our job to identify those and gently bring them around to how this can be an effective solution for their learners or whatever audience it is that you're addressing.
Yes.
Definitely, definitely. So what would you say, and we have a big mix of people. We have some PhD students, we have some master's level students, we have some bachelor's level students, we have lots of experienced teachers who are transitioning over. So I think that's great advice, just listening for those gaps, and Regine had echoed that in the comments. And be sure if something comes to mind to put that in the comments, and we'll address that when Dr. Garrett is done talking. We have Dr. Veronica Outlaw on the call tonight. So yeah, good to see her here. So talk about your job responsibilities. What would a typical a typical job look like for you, say if you were starting with a new client? And I know there's no typical, probably, right?
Yeah. So again, just finding out, because a lot of times it may be developing a course. And so again, that would start with talking to the professors who are teaching the course and trying to see, okay, how many is it going to be one teacher, or are they co-teaching? And if so, what are the responsibilities of each teacher? And going from there, figuring out, okay, do they already have a book that they're using? Is there a third-party vendor that they are using, type software that they may be using with the course? What is their understanding of that third-party vendor software? Because with that in itself, that's a whole nother creature a lot of times. And I tell faculty that, you really have to be mindful when you're shopping around to decide on what would be useful for the student, but also, does it work well with the learning management system that you're using? And if not, what is the workaround for the student? Because you got to think, in those instances, you got to think there are 2 different perspectives. You got the instructor's perspective, and then you have the student perspective. And communicating with the instructor, as you're going through that process of developing courses, letting them know, okay, if I'm a student, this is what I'm expecting to see. Does this software deliver that? And if not, what's the workaround for it to help me be successful as a student? So it's that same thought process throughout, your interaction with that client. And so it's a lot of times a repeat. So you may be tweaking things here or there just based off of the type of client that you're working with. But overall, it's still looking for what is the voice of the audience that you really need to listen to.
Right, right. And so if someone was thinking about eventually down the line that they might be interested in becoming an ID consultant, how do you really establish yourself, as an expert? You mentioned going to conferences, presenting at conferences, networking, getting your name out there. And I mean, you started with 3.5 years. So how do you get the courage to get out there and do your thing and sell yourself?
You know what? You just keep telling yourself that things are going to work out, even if you don't know how they're going to work out. Stay positive, keep a positive attitude, be optimistic about yourself, because if it's something that you're passionate about, especially in this world of instructional design, there's so many different things that you can do with it. Initially, I think that I had limited my thoughts to just one particular area. And then the more I thought through things and the different opportunities that I got, I started to expand my understanding of how I could apply my skills. So just be optimistic, because you just never know how things are going to shift with particular skill sets that you have and how they can be used to help higher ed, K-12, or any other corporate or nonprofit organization that's out there.
Right. And I think we talked a couple weeks ago, and you had said that you were fortunate in that your reputation, your professionalism, your prior experience has spoken for you, and you have had the next job offered to you, and then the next job, and you really, I think that's how you've set yourself up for success as a consultant. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. So you never know, like when you're out looking on these different job boards, a lot of times think from the perspective of it may be posted as a job, but if you see contact information on to get in contact with a recruiter or somebody within an organization, you may be able to present what you have to offer on a contractual basis. And though that's a different way to approach those types of opportunities. Don't be closed-minded to anything, because anything's possible. Just give it a try.
Right, right. And so where did you have, and I honestly, I don't think I've asked you this, but did you have a mentor or someone that you went to help you figure out, how do I become a contractor? How do I offer my services this way?
You know what? I would give credit to Dr. Benson and Dr. Wright from UA, because, and not necessarily from the perspective of contracting, but again, just those things, those foundational pieces that they gave us while we were in the program were things that I always reflect back on. And while I was in the program, I had the opportunity. I don't know how I got on this mailing list, but it was a mailing list that offered different contracting jobs. So I would see different things come out from time to time. And one particular thing, a contracting HR person contacted me and asked if I was available to do some contract work. And I did end up doing that while I was at Alabama. So that in itself kind of opened up my eyes to, and that was with a corporation. So that opened my eyes to more of contractual type things that were out there that students and others maybe hadn't paid much attention to.
Right, right. And talk about that from the standpoint of, we're all so busy. Most of us are working full-time jobs. We are thinking about making that transition into ID. How was it to go to school full-time, manage your life, and manage a contract at the same time? Manage that for the first time.
You know what? Because keeping a calendar, that's the first thing. Keeping a calendar and knowing, especially if you got different projects and things like that are due for your classes or classes that you may be teaching. Just keeping everything in line so that things don't pile up and you overlook anything. So that was one of my better tools, is always just to keep my calendar up to date as much in advance as possible.
Right, right. And I think there's the statement that's been made that a few times in the group is you don't have to know everything. When you go into a full-time job, a part-time job, a contracting job, that you really have to have the attitude of, you know what, I'm smart, I have the knowledge, I have resources, I'm going to figure it out.
That is very true. Because again, you're going in listening. Always go in listening. Because that's going to save you a lot of time. Also, by not trying to prescribe something that you have really no clue about until they give you more details. You have that framework of things that we are familiar with as instructional designers. But again, your goal is, okay, I know this framework. They don't. So it's my job to listen to them until I can have a clear understanding of how to explain the framework to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So we had talked about kind of work-life balance, and you've been working from home a long time before COVID, and on the road, and back at home, on the road again, working from home. How do you maintain that balance? And I know you said keeping a calendar, but how do you make sure that you step away from the work so that you're able to come back refreshed?
Let me think about that. I think you find those different things that you like outside of work. And so for me, a couple of things that I enjoy, like I started taking salsa lessons. So go salsa dancing, and learning that was a new challenge for me. So I love also to go to the gym and do different classes at the gym, yoga, or just different things, Zumba, just different classes. So those are the type of things I think that kind of help break up my mindset as far as always saying focus on work or working from home, because that is my getaway outside of working from home.
Right, right. And how have things shifted from pre-COVID to post? What have you seen in your consulting work and with the corporations and organizations that you are doing work for?
High demand. We have always pretty much this area, because of distance learning, the growth of distance learning within schools, again, whether that's K-12, higher ed, or adult learners within corporations, that has been a growing trend naturally. But with the pandemic, it has, I would say, quadrupled, because people a lot of times really weren't taking the whole distance education as serious. And this has forced organizations to really think through, okay, what is my next way of communicating and educating my students? So, you will see more workshops and things of that nature that are offered. If it's for faculty, a lot of faculty workshops where they may come in and discuss issues that they're having or try out different tools before they actually implement it into their course. And also trying to help them understand why they're using a particular type of technology instead of just, it's a new tool, having a good understanding of how it's going to impact the student as they're utilizing this new tool.
Right, right. Talk a little bit about, and think this is a perfect opportunity, but talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've had. I mean, certainly you must have a range of subject matter experts, some that are very comfortable with online learning, some that don't really want to investigate distance learning or be told you have to do it now. How do you approach that and bring that thought process around?
Well, I think one of the bigger challenges is, dealing with individuals who don't like change.
Mhm.
And if that is the implementation of technology or moving more towards the use of distance learning in whatever environment, then you're gonna have that resistance. So the good part about what I do is, okay, whomever I actually have the contract with is the person that overall I answer to that individual or group of individuals. So those who are responsible for implementing whatever I'm rolling out, they have to answer to those individuals as well. So, it's important to have an open line of communication so that the powers that be that make those final decisions, they understand the challenges, first of all, that their people are going to have. And I'm really upfront about that. And I tell people, especially when you're dealing with instructional design of courses, a lot of times it's extremely painful to people because they don't realize the amount of time and effort that it really takes to getting the information in format for students to be able to flow with.
Mhm.
So just re-educating everybody on that and trying to develop workshops and interactions with clients so that they understand with them as that student, from that student perspective, they kind of get a little bit of a feel for what their student would actually experience. So that makes a huge difference a lot of times. And I make that point to point those types of things out to them and let them know, okay, this issue that you're having is the same issue that a student in your class will be having, and making that connection for them. And a lot of times that helps. The more you do that, the more it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as an instructional designer, whether you're in corporate, government, freelance, whether you're a consultant, whether you're the expert coming in to help an entire university, you really do have to have that learner perspective and keep that in your mind the whole time. It's so easy to get caught up in the latest, greatest tool and say, oh my gosh, yeah, that's right. This is for the learner. We have to make sure that we engage and that we create something that's special and that they will remember and that's useful for them. So the challenges aside, what have been some really high points? What have been some really great things that have come out of your work as a consultant?
Seeing that light go off in some of your clients' eyes a lot of times, especially those who may not be as tech savvy, they will, a lot of times people will try and try, and then you have that aha moment that you really see them come to life with whatever it is, they are trying to implement. Those are, I see a lot of those, and I like to see that transition for them because they, a lot of times, are the ones that become the change agent for you.
Mhm, mhm. So you develop those folks who are maybe your core group of your experts or your cheerleaders that can really drive that thought process.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Become your advocates, I guess.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. So you've really seen some growth at the places where you've worked.
Say it again.
I said you've really seen some growth then from folks being reticent and maybe a little wary of this person that we don't know coming into the university or to the corporate environment, and then through your workshops, really giving them that background, that information, those facts about why you should be implementing things a certain way. And Dave asked, how have you ever had a project go off the rails? And if so, what methods did you implement to try and get things back on track?
Yes. So again, it goes back to who's the project sponsor, and speaking with the project sponsors, whether it's one or multiple individuals, letting them know what the issues are that you see that could, that is taking this project off track, and telling them the options, potential options, and also kind of prioritizing the different options and allowing them to decide which option should be pushed forward to kind of get things back on track.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Yeah, very, very logical approach. And Dave also asked, he says, tools are such a focus for us as IDs, and we all want to be as well-rounded as possible. When working with clients, does it come up often that someone wants various assets all working together for one goal? For example, a course built in storyline, but as well as accompanying pieces like a job aid, a video, infographic, screencast, and a PowerPoint. And you may not get into that granularity because you are more of the advisor, but could you speak to that?
So basically, my understanding of the question is they are wanting one goal. That's the aim. Or can you say that again?
Yes. So someone wants various assets. So they have one, say they want a course developed, but they want storyline and they want a job aid in it, a video, infographic, screencast, PowerPoint, all of these things. What would you say to one of your faculty members who said, this is great. I want to implement this in Blackboard, but I also want all of these other pieces.
So before you actually start a project, you need to talk with the instructor to find out, are they only wanting components built in the learning management system, or are there other components that should be built as well? Such as, our instructors making videos that are going to need to be transcribed and edited and things of that nature. So having a checklist of different types of resources that they may want, they may not have all the answers up front, but at least you are continuously reminding them of other options as you're learning more about what they're trying to do with that particular class. Right. So that can help you kind of narrow down, especially if it goes back to them finding a new piece of technology and being excited about it, but it really doesn't work with what they have for that particular assignment or that particular lesson, then you may be able to steer them in a different direction if you have a list of other options that may work better.
I like that. Okay. And Gwen asks, in your opinion, what must you have in your ID toolkit before you go out on your own and become a consultant? And so, Gwen, does this mean knowledge and technology tools? Just some clarification. Dave gave thumbs up. So let's just assume. So what would you say? Looking back, I guess, a couple. If you could talk to the early version of Dr. Kristi Garrett, what would you tell her that she had to have in her toolkit?
Just say yes.
Okay.
That's what I would say, is just say yes. Because again, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Laura. You don't know everything, but at the same time, you do have a solid foundation and a solid framework that you can always pull from. So just go for it.
Okay.
Just go for it, because it's an activity of research, because again, you're listening to the client and you are developing based off of what you hear their needs are. So, and you just kind of go from there.
Okay. And Gwen did say technology tools, and I would say, and Kristi, you can confirm this, but it really depends on, from a consultant perspective, what tools that university has available, what tools that organization has available, and those things could look very different.
Exactly. You have to, understand the type of school or corporation that you're working with, because if they have limited resources, then communicating that to the instructor or whomever is extremely important, because I've had instructors that say, well, why can't we have this or why can't we have that? And, I have to reiterate, this is what is available according to, whoever the sponsors are. This is what they told me that was available. So, and just reiterating that, and also, encouraging faculty to find free resources, because there's tons of stuff that's out there that works just as well. And, just being willing to try it, because if it gets the message across, whatever that message or that lesson is, then it's a good tool.
Definitely. And so Gwen says the consultant should have their own tools. And so I think consulting, and we can make this delineation, is different than being a freelancer. So a freelancer would purchase his or her own tools and then work with a client. Yes, you would have your own version of Articulate or Captivate or Beyond. For Dr. Garrett and folks who are consultants, you really are there to look at the overall scope, look at what tools that organization has, and then give guidance. Is that accurate?
That's very accurate. Not to say that those other tools are not important, but at the same time, go with whatever you feel comfortable with as far as the tools that you want to promote yourself with as a consultant.
Right. And so you may be able to suggest, Gwen, that you've tried out this amazing new tool and that you think it might really fit well with that corporation or university. Okay. And Veronica, Dr. Outlaw says we must be careful in trying to implement all of the bells and whistles because they may not align with the objectives.
So true.
Most times they may want the flash, but not realizing it doesn't add to the learning.
Yes.
And I think there's always going to be the next great Articulate 360 or the next Captivate or the next Beyond. And so I think you have to approach it from the standpoint of you have this foundation, you know how to do certain things, you can learn how to do the next latest greatest if you need to. Okay. So Dave asked, thinking of emerging technologies, where do you see the future of ID going? What technologies or techniques do you see being used more and more?
I can't really say that let's see. Again, it goes back to what Laura just said. There's so many different pieces of technology that's out there, and they're always evolving. So I wouldn't necessarily say one versus another. As far as instructional design, I definitely see that there will be more for adult learners outside of higher ed. So so that would be like corporation, nonprofit organizations that would have different types of training, different workshops, or even, as we're seeing now, virtual meetings. So a lot of times individuals within corporations don't have that skill set to navigate different platforms, such as, I'm just going to say Zoom, for instance, and having someone to actually manage that for them is, really important to make that whole virtual experience as seamless as possible. So I definitely foresee more of that as we move forward, even after the pandemic era.
Definitely one of the projects that we had to tackle kind of as a last minute thing a few months ago was creating job aids for Webex events, which is different than the Webex platform in terms of how many people can attend. And we had a huge sales force that had no idea how to use it. And of course, we had a cursory knowledge of Webex. I mean, we use MS Teams, we've used Zoom, we've used Skype, but you just have to absorb it and say, okay, sure, we can create the job aids, no problem. And then test it out and go step by step and just create them and just do it. So let me ask you, and we just have a few minutes left, and I want to be respectful of your time because I know you're so busy. And I think I had asked you, like, when can you be available to talk to the group? And you're like, I don't know, this week maybe. I have this little slice of time. But what do you wish you knew when you started as an instructional designer?
What do I wish I knew? I would say this: a lot of times, if you go into an environment where there are other people who've been exposed to instructional design, but maybe not fully understand the scope of instructional design, sometimes those individuals are, pose a challenge because they have the mindset that they have a good understanding of what instructional design is, and, versus someone who is totally new to the concept. So I would say that would be one of the things that if I had known or thought through that a little more, thinking from the perspective of those individuals who've gotten their feet wet, but at the same time being able to provide them with something that was a little bit more challenging for them as to where they were with the implementation of new technologies.
Okay. And so level setting, for example, when you go into a corporation or organization, so just making sure maybe that everybody has that same understanding of what ID is and what you're there to do.
What you are there to do, exactly.
Okay. Exactly. Great. Well, I so appreciate your time, and Dr. Kristi Garrett, and we are just blessed to have you with us and answering questions and talking to us about what an ID consultant does. I think that this is a topic that we haven't covered before, and I really feel like it's part of my job to expose folks to all the opportunities and all of the great things that are available to them as instructional designers. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And I wanted to let everybody know that next week, December 29th, we're going to have Regine on talking about accessibility and universal design. And then in January, Robin Van Dusen is coming in and talking about transitioning from education to instructional design. So lots and lots of great things on the horizon. Much more to come. But Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas, Dr. Garrett. And thank you so much for being a part of the group and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you all for having me. You all have a great end of the year. I've been saying, instead of happy holidays, I'm saying healthy holidays. So be careful, wear your mask, wash your hands.
All right. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.